It is the week of the Rugby World Cup final between New Zealand and South Africa. In today's video, I'm going to be reflecting upon last weekend's action in the Rugby World Cup semi-finals by discussing the 7 things in which we have learnt. Now, a couple of these will be good to look at, as I think they give us a good insight of what we can expect next weekend and what both of the teams will have to prepare for. Start off with point number 1. It only takes 10 minutes. And this one really hurts to say as an English supporter. It's in reference to the South African comeback in the last 10 minutes with a try and a penalty and kept the English scoreless to go on and win the match. I think this weekend, the last 10 minutes is going to be so important. The impact from the benches will be imperative. We always know the South Africans will really bring a strong bench and really implement their power in the latter stages. And the All Blacks will simply have to match this. I often see teams leave a couple of their best players on the bench to match the impact or try and dominate the impact of the opponent's bench. Maybe we'll see a little bit of that, but the All Blacks will have to be switched on for the entirety of the game. Likewise for South Africa, you can't, at this level of rugby, sort of go to sleep for 5 to 10 minutes because you'll wake up and you'll be plenty of points down. So the last 10 minutes will be really important in this game. Point number 2, All Blacks don't change in the knockout rugby. We've seen the All Blacks play a really nice style of rugby, scoring plenty of tries across the knockout games so far. We saw against Ireland scoring a good few tries and then plenty of tries against Argentina. So that is a World Cup quarter-final and a World Cup semi-final in which they've scored a good amount of tries in, which shows they haven't really adapted their game plan to the knockout rugby. They've managed to keep up the same tempo and same style of play in these games. It's most likely going to have to change this weekend against a really strong Springbok defence, but maybe we will see the All Blacks still throw the ball around and play with the same endeavour and adventure which us rugby fans love to watch, because it is really good and entertaining stuff. Point number 3, New Zealand and South Africa defence on fire. Now the two finalists didn't even concede a try in their respective Rugby World Cup semi-finals, which is a huge statement going into the World Cup final. New Zealand kept Argentina scoreless despite the Argentinians doing some really nice passages of play with crossfield kicks and certain line breaks. And then the South Africans held England out for the duration. England had plenty of good attacking positions in the South African 22 in which they managed to hold the Red Roses out. So fair play to the two finalists, and it'll be interesting to see how the respective attacks will fare against two really good defensive teams. South Africa, historically, are probably known as the better defensive side, but the All Blacks have shown great strides there over the last few weeks, and especially in the last year. Point number 4, down and out with pride. We've seen the two losing sides in the semi-finals go out with a real good level of fight. The English with a slightly different type of fight to the Argentinians. The English were in it right to the death and got pipped at the post by South Africa, and the English showed a lot of endeavour and real grit and strength to stay in the game, in which they're really expected to fall short in by a long margin. And then the Argentinians, they were down and out with pride in a slightly different way. They weren't competitive or hugely competitive throughout the whole game, especially on the scoreboard, but they didn't change their sort of methodology. They wanted to throw the ball around and they tried to score tries right to the end and didn't quit at any point. Point number 5, physicality doesn't equal cards. And we saw two really physical games, mainly the South Africa and England game, in which there wasn't a card, no massive high tackles, despite it being so physical. I think the only card of the weekend was from Scott Barrett, which wasn't from a high tackle, wasn't from being overly physical. It was just a bit of ill discipline and silly play. So this does go to show that rugby can be played at such a physical level with huge men, and doesn't have to equal cards, which was ultimately really good for the spectacle. No team wants to see players go off for cards, especially in the biggest test matches in knockout rugby. Point number 6 is a quote from Oxenshea: "Salads don't win scrums," and that is ultimately true, as he showed the English on that Saturday night. Some brilliant stuff from Oxenshea and Vincent Koch, the two replacement Springbok props in that game, and I just thought I'd credit them with that because they were so instrumental in the comeback of the South Africans and enabled Pollard to kick the winning kick. And then point number 7 is an unpredictable final. We saw the South Africans sort of run riot at Twickenham over the All Blacks sort of a couple of weeks before the World Cup, which you saw the odds for the All Blacks to win the World Cup dropped right down. People were, this is the worst All Blacks team, all of these comments. The All Blacks have then gone about their business quietly. They lost the opening game to France, which must have knocked their confidence even more, but they've slowly built to the emphatic victory over the Irish in the quarter-final, and then a brilliant win over the Argentinians in the semi-final. So they've been building slowly. And then the South Africans, they were came into the World Cup on fire. They then lost to Ireland, which sort of knocked them down again, and then they had a real poor performance against the English. So we don't really know where these two sides are, but one thing I do know is it will make for a quality rugby match. Both teams are steeped in rugby history, trying to go for the fourth Rugby World Cup, and either of the two sides, no matter what happens in the game, we will see a fourth time Rugby World Cup champion after the game. So it's shaping up to be a really nice game. Both teams like to play rugby. The All Blacks will want to keep the game open and play a really attractive brand of rugby, and I suppose the Springboks will want to really suffocate the All Blacks and play a real set piece dominant and power game. So it'll be very interesting to see how the two sides shape up with very different runs of form going into this game, but it will be a belter no matter what. Let me know your thoughts on the game, and let me know your thoughts on the 7 things in which I've picked up from this weekend's action. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And is there anything I have missed out? But yeah, thank you very much for watching.